welcome to today's webinar. I am Damon Miller. I'm one of the partners and a family wealth strategist here at TFO Family Office Partners. So last year we launched a webinar series focused on the challenges business owners face before, during, and after a sale. And we're excited to continue the series today with a special guest, John Chionchio. Hopefully I got that right. We've practiced it a few times. He's from WealthPoint Business Advisory Services. And John will share his expert insights on designing and implementing succession and exit strategies that align your business assets with your life goals. Now, before proceeding with today's presentation, we have a few housekeeping items to address. Today's event is a webinar. That means by default, all attendees are muted and have their videos turned off, so we cannot see you. Today's event is being recorded and a recording will be available later. Now, at the bottom of your screen, you will see an icon for a Q&A. If you have any questions throughout today's event, please use that to submit your questions. I'll see them on this side and I'll try to work them in if we can. We'll either answer it on the fly. If not, there'll be some time at the end of today's webinar to answer them aloud. And if we can't get it to then, we'll reach out to you after the fact to get back to you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to John. So by age 24, John founded and sold his first electronics company to Rockwell Avionics and Communication and Westinghouse. After building a strategic consulting practice focused on serving business owners, John transitioned to WealthPoint, selling his practice to join the firm as a partner. At WealthPoint, John thrives on helping business owners navigate complex succession and exit strategies to achieve their lifelong goals. He's a University of Wisconsin-Madison graduate with a BS in electrical and computer engineering. And John also holds a Series 6 and 63 securities licenses and a Certified Exit Planning Advisor certification from the Exit Planning Institute. So he definitely knows his stuff. So John, thank you for joining us today. And we'll turn the time over to you now and look forward to hearing what you have to share with us today.
All right. Thanks a lot, Damon. I really appreciate the kind words. I'm pushing a couple of buttons here so I can share my screen and we'll get going. Anyway, I really want to start by saying a huge thank you to TFO and to Damon and Andy just for the opportunity to work together and serve business owners at a higher level around succession and exit, because it's such an important part in the life cycle of business ownership to achieve all the outcomes you want with this really specialized asset you've built. So today, the purpose of today is really a very high level to look at succession and exit planning and execution and get a good understanding of what it takes to get it right. And if we can accomplish that, I think I'll be happy. It's a really complex topic we could talk about for days, and I want to be done in about 30 minutes so we have time for questions. So I'm going to get rolling here. And stick your questions in the chat. Hope we have time at the end to address them. All right. So the key takeaways I hope we can get across today are just really learning what is true outcome-driven succession planning. And a lot of that is involved in preparing the asset properly to achieve the outcomes you want. And another big part of it is understanding all of the options you have to transition ownership of the asset to somebody else. And it's about making excellent decisions to achieve the outcomes you want, and not just some of them, but all of them, because you've traded a lot of your life to build this asset, and to get a partial outcome is not what we're shooting for. So we'll also talk a little bit about industry challenges, because the industry does have some challenges to serve owners well around exit. I lived through that, and it's a big part of why I do what I do today. And then we'll talk about what really matters, how to get it right, and what you should do right now to make sure you get it right. But really, a privately held business it's a highly specialized financial asset. It's an asset that often has far more meaning and purpose in owners' lives than just money. It's not like a stock or a bond or a piece of real estate or some of the other asset classes. And often what evolves, what happens is the business evolves so that it supports a lot of people that I've come to call chosen family. And these are people who started out following you personally and your cause. And then over time became people you care about deeply, who helped you build the asset, whose lives will be affected when you make your choices and decisions about passing it on to the next set of owners. And decisions around monetizing the business become much more important. And as investors in publicly traded companies, when we sell our shares, we don't really care that much about what happens to the company when we don't own any of it anymore. But this is different when it's your company that you've built and it's supporting many people and their families who you care about. It's a different ballgame. And what happens to this asset after you pass it on to many business owners matters and matters a lot. So it's just a different game we're in, and it's important to understand it to achieve the outcomes you really want. So we'll talk about all those things and some other things. So let's move on. Yeah, I would just want to spend a minute on this because I think everybody deserves to know who they're talking to, and the firm also. So Damon did a good job of talking about me. I'm just basically a serial entrepreneur from the time I was 11, running multiple paper outs, putting myself through college, running my own businesses in the summer and so forth. And Damon told you the rest of the story. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on me, but WealthPoint is a business advisory services, is a really unique boutique firm. And we're basically a bunch of ex-serial entrepreneurs who have built businesses and monetized them and, learned a lot through the process, a lot of it the hard way. And we realized, how hard it is to get it right, how complex it is, and how we weren't served the way we would have hoped. And in the end, ended up all getting together and doing what we do now with really a singular focus to just help owners get exit right. So we are succession and exit planning experts, and we follow through to fruition with all the plans we craft. And part of that is executive comp and ESOP formations, often all the part of a single engagement. And that's all we do. We don't manage money. We don't sell anything like insurance or anything else. We don't accept money from anyone but our clients. We are strictly fee-based consultants to help fellow business owners get exit right and achieve the outcomes they want with the asset they've built. So that's enough about us. Let's roll here. So
Yeah, and I guess maybe a great opening question, John, is when should someone contact you?
that is a good question. And right away is the answer. I mean, the best time to really get savvy about exit is, before you start your business, if ideally, but the next best day is really now, because it's really simple. The sooner you start, the more runway you have, the better your outcomes will be. I have seen issues where 10-year runways turn into 2-year runways when someone knows all their options. And so you just, until you know the game, it's really, you don't know what to do. And the game can change once you do understand it. So, it's about education in the beginning, and it's never too soon to get that education about what it takes to get exit right. So, even if it's 10 years down the road, it'll change the way you operate your business on a daily basis many times once you really understand what's involved in preparing the asset and how long it takes. So, there's not really a time that's too soon, I don't think. Good question. Okay, the point of this slide is that even if you only consider achieving the monetization outcomes that you want, getting exit right is really complex. When you monetize your largest financial asset, it has ripple effects and consequences, intended or otherwise, in so many other areas of your holistic financial planning. It affects your legacy planning, your philanthropic planning, asset protection, risk management, estate planning, wealth transfer, asset protection, often family government. And I mean, there's just so much to it um, that it's just very hard to make sense of it all and to get to a place where you're confident and comfortable making decisions that you're going to get one chance at. So the point is that it's it's not something that you can do as an add-on. It's really an area of planning all its own. And actually, I'm really excited to be working with TFO because the combination of a family office structure and a specialist to help get exit right is a really powerful combination. So um, moving along here. So as with any complex situation, it requires a process to get it right, a really dialed in process. And over the last 15 years and helping 250 plus owner groups and family groups to do this one thing with a laser focus, we've developed this process. And I want to go through and explain it, not as an advertisement for us or anything, but just to help you all understand what's involved in really eating this elephant, right? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? But which bite do you take first? Do you eat the trunk or the ears or the ribs? I mean, so there's a way to get it right that we've developed over the years through trial and error. And it starts up in step one with knowledge baseline. Our mantra is know your story. And you see that in the middle of that Venn diagram. And that's the step one, is to really learn your own story. And there are three parts to that. The first part is, what outcomes are you trying to achieve through the transition of this asset? So some of those are monetization outcomes, reaching financial independence, et cetera. And so there are people, though, in that business you care about whose lives will be affected. So, what do you want for them? That influences many owners' decision making. So who are these people? What's important to them? We need those puzzle pieces on the table to really give you the information you need to make good decisions. And then what do you want for the future of the asset itself? When you've spent a big chunk of your life to build this thing, and there are a lot of people you care about attached to it, what do you want for the future of the business after you pass it on? Is it okay if it goes onto a PE platform and basically the business vaporizes and lots of your people lose their jobs because they're redundant? If you have control over that, are there other things you'd like to see happen? So what are the values and the vision this business goes forward and pursues, yours or somebody else's? And if you have control over those things, usually those are important to owners. So let's first and foremost figure out where we're trying to get through this transition, what we're trying to achieve, because those outcomes truly drive everything that we should be doing, right? And so that's the first phase, is figuring out where to go. Second, we need to analyze the asset itself. So where is this asset relative to its ability to support these outcomes or not? So let's do evaluation. Let's understand the current true value of the business. Let's look at the trajectory of that value and figure out, is it currently in a position where it can support those outcomes and you're good to go? Or are there things we need to be working on to take the asset from where it is now to where it needs to be at some point in the future, so that it can support those outcomes, hopefully at some point in time before you want to exit? So that's the second part. And the third part is, there's a toolbox over here to create and craft solutions to transition the asset. And there are lots of tools in this toolbox. There are 10 plus ways to monetize your equity in the business. Well, what are all those ways? They all have varying degrees of impact on your ability to achieve those outcomes or not. And you should understand those things. And there are lots of other tools in the box that are not related to transitioning your equity and monetizing the business, but that are often a part of a complete solution, things to keep key players at the business for the long term: stock appreciation rights plans, phantom equity, restricted and performance stock units, non-qualified deferred comp like SERPs for exiting owners down the road, for retirement income. So what's in the toolbox over here? And once you know the outcomes and where the asset is relative to supporting them, and all the tools in the box you can apply to the asset to achieve the outcomes, we call that knowing your story. And until you know that, how do you make good decisions about where to go from here? You really can't. So, and if we don't know that as your advisors, we can't advise you well. So job one is to learn the game and where you are in it. And then we can craft the path forward that's best. So that's the first phase. The second phase, so it brings you to a decision point. Are you good to go if you just keep doing what you're doing? Are you going to get there? You're on track or not? And if not, what do we need to be doing going forward to make improvements to the business in whatever areas, whether it be financial, relational, operational, et cetera, to take the asset where it needs to be. And you're at a point, a fork in the road, where you decide, where do I go from here? The third phase, called singular story, is all about intentionally creating true collaboration among your entire team of advisors, because when you do something this complex with all those effects in other areas of your life, you really need the best work from all your advisors. And I know when I was building my businesses and I spent thousands of dollars to have all my advisors in the same conference room for half a day and had all these issues I wanted some clarity on, I got some things figured out, but I often walked out of that room with as many questions as I went in with, and I didn't really have the comfort and confidence to know exactly what to do from here forward. And so getting that true collaboration out of your team toward very specific outcomes is kind of tricky, and it's really important. So this step is all about that. So we work with your advisors. We take all those potential solutions with the tools in the box, and we talk about them from a tax perspective, a legal perspective, a financial perspective, cash flows and impacts on financial planning and so forth, estate planning, so that when we go through the options that'll get you to your outcomes and talk about them and bring them to you so you can think about them, they're fully vetted, and you know everything you should know about those options to consider them, right? That's what step 3 is all about. Step 4 is all about stress testing. We have some proprietary financial modeling technology we've evolved and developed over the years out of necessity. And the business goes in there, every line item, profit and loss, cash flow, balance sheet, and your personal financial statement goes in there. And they're all numerically integrated. So now we can turn knobs on the business and watch the needles on your personal financial life and say, what does it really mean to me if I say yes to this solution here, where I'm going to sell 40% of my business to an ESOP and get that monetization at transaction, and do a 60% 301 redemption to my leadership team and get all those proceeds out tax-free, but it's going to take 4 or 5 years, and maybe there's a SERP starting 5 years down the road for me. What if I say yes to that solution? What does it really mean to me? How do I make good decisions? So we can model all that. We can play with the business, every line item, linear, nonlinear, model anything from COVID to whatever you can dream up, and stress test all these potential solutions from a best case scenario, a worst case scenario. Maybe it's 100% ESOP with a bunch of bank financing, and we can just push it till it breaks and we can't meet the bank covenants anymore. How bad does business have to get before that solution fails? And we can iterate modeling things so that you can see these ripple effects and unintended consequences in other areas of your life as part of the decision-making process, so that you can make really excellent decisions about where to go with this asset and how to monetize it and pass it on. And once that phase is over, you get clarity on, this is my solution architecture that I want to pass this business on with. Step 5 is all about world-class project execution, project management, where we become the accountability partners for everybody, ourselves, you, your other advisors, and we get it done. Because truly, with no execution, there's very little value to a succession plan, right? A plan on a piece of paper is worth about the same as a used piece of paper. And business owners are extremely busy. They don't have time. They've never been through it. They don't understand how to do it themselves. You must execute to provide value, so we do. And step 6 is really an ongoing retainer type relationship at a lower level, because by then we know your people, we know your business, we know your vision. And many owners want to keep us around on a limited basis to help them make future decisions, whether they're opening a new division or coming out with a new product line and they want to model it and things like that. But that's our process we've developed. It works. We've used it hundreds of times. There aren't any extra steps. You can't leave any out. So the point isn't about our process. It's about, you need a process. So if you're pursuing an exit, make sure whoever you're working with has a process you're comfortable with, that you'll be able to make really good decisions, because you get one shot and you don't get any redos.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, John, one theme we've seen with all the various discussions we've had with different professionals, if you're not intentional about where you want to go with your business, it's hard to know if you had a good outcome. And the process, once you start selling it, could kind of drive you versus you driving it towards your desired destination. But as a side tangent, one thing that we've talked about a little bit is, can you describe the difference between operating your business well versus owning it well?
yeah, we have talked about that. That's a really super question. Many owners don't realize there's a difference between those two things, but there's a huge difference between running your business well on a day-to-day basis and owning it well as a financial asset and doing the things you need to do with that asset to achieve the outcomes you want upon exit. And in the full life cycle ownership journey of a business owner, so many of the things you want to accomplish with that asset for yourself and other people in the greater scope of your life are dependent on exit and on how well you exit and pass the business on. So the difference there is really getting out of operations in your mind and saying, boy, if this were a stock or a bond or a piece of real estate, it would be simple. I buy it low and I wait till it's at a high in the market, and I have enough flexibility in my liquidation plan to liquidate it at a high, and poof, it performs financially. Well, there's a little more to it with this specialized financial asset, right? I mean, there are 50 plus things a buyer will take you through in due diligence to determine their risk, and every one of them will devalue your business. And so, but what gets missed many times is that it doesn't really matter whether it's monetization outcomes, outcomes for your people, outcomes for the future of the business. They all depend on the future success of the business. And so that has very little to do with who owns the shares, right? In fact, it's a great segue into the next slide, actually. So I'll move on. And we'll talk more about the details of that. So, so what are you really selling when you sell a business? I mean, not many people think through that, but the truth is every business buys itself. You're actually monetizing future cash flow. What you can convince the buyer will be their cash flow after they own it. That's what you're selling. The past doesn't matter except to convince the buyer what will happen for them. You're monetizing the future success of the business. And when you think through so many of the monetization strategies, whether it be an owner investor model, a generational transfer, a leveraged or unleveraged internal transition, a 301, a recapitalization, in all of those, the performance of the business after the transaction, it doesn't matter who owns the shares. The real issues are what's important to the future success. Where does the leadership come from for the business? Who provides the visionary and strategic guidance of the business in the marketplace? Who makes it tick operationally like a Swiss watch? And what about the culture? Who's the keeper of the culture to attract and retain talent long term? And what about relationships, internal or external to the business, with key vendors, key clients, government officials, if you get government contracts? Relationships don't just transition overnight, right? And so all of these things that are important to the future success of the business have to go with the business, not with anyone who wants to exit. And so what we're really talking about to achieve outcomes, monetization or otherwise, is building that longevity into the asset so that after the transaction, the business continues to thrive, right? The whole business has to be transferable, not just ownership. And somehow in the industry, that gets lost a lot, and owners don't really understand that. And the point of that is that preparing the asset is not something that takes weeks or months. It typically takes years to transition relationships, to replace visionary and strategic skills, to put glue in the seat for key people so they stick around after the transaction, even if the new owner is a butthead, right? I mean, these things are important to understand and get right if you're going to really achieve all the outcomes you want with this asset after all your work and all your risk and all your investment. So preparing the asset is absolutely fundamental to achieving outcomes. And in the industry, it's evolved in a way where this really just isn't understood very well. So, and it has a lot to do with some of the other things we'll talk about in a minute. But did that answer your question?
No, very much.
Okay. Scooting along. So let's talk about monetizing the asset. I mean, how many ways are there to get paid for your equity? And what are the impacts of all those different ways on the outcomes you want? And can you really understand what those impacts are? How do you figure out all those ripple effects? And really, should you be making any decisions with the one chance you have to get this right if you don't understand these things? This is so monetizing an asset, depending on how you count them, there are 10 ways or so. I mean, there are owner investor models, and there are leveraged and unleveraged internal transitions, 301 redemptions, recapitalizations, ESOPs, IPOs, strategic and financial third-party sales, wind downs. I mean, and not to even mention hybrid solutions where we use multiple of those, because when we're trying to apply these tools to this asset to achieve specific goals, there aren't any rules that you just have to use one tool in the box, and many solutions are hybrids. So let's just take one example of an ESOP, of an employee stock ownership plan. This is one way to monetize a business. It's a very powerful way. It's very complex and it's very obscure. It's not very well understood. So let's just take this one method as an example and see what kind of impacts it has, right? To demonstrate how important it is to know all your options. So there are 4 main areas that drive most business owners' decisions around passing the business on, particularly boomers. And always one of them is monetizing. How much are you going to get? What's your net pennies in your pocket after all taxes and fees and so forth? So with an ESOP is a financial buyer. So you'll get the same you'll get full fair market value for your business through an ESOP as you would with a financial third-party sale. It's a different kind of a sale because it's not controversial. It's but they're financial buyers. So you're going to get full fair market value. So
and John, just a quick point, an ESOP means employee stock ownership plan, right?
Correct. It's an ERISA plan similar to a 401k, but different in a lot of ways. But it's a qualified plan that transitions beneficial ownership to the business to all your employees, all your full-time employees. So they're amazingly powerful tools for transition. And when you monetize even 100% of the equity in the business today, you can get a huge bite of the apple down the road, 5 or 6 years down the road, through many levers you can pull by design in an ESOP, including warrants and internal lending and really good return rates on that, and participation in the ESOP itself. And so it's very common that with an ESOP, you monetize 100% today for full value, and 5 years down the road, you get another 40, 50, 60% of that initial value based on the growth of the business after the transaction. So very powerful monetization strategy. What about control over what happens to your people? Well, in an ESOP, you have total control over that. And not only do you have total control over it, you get to design it yourself. So there are very few things you can do for your employees that will impact their retirement lifestyle more than giving them a beneficial interest in the value of the business itself and the future growth of that value. That's what an ESOP does. And I mean, I'm here to tell you that the ESOP ownership structure has created more millionaires in this country than any other ownership structure, bar none. So they're very powerful when it comes to wanting to do things for your employees, and they don't have to put a penny of their own money into it. So when it comes to what happens to my people, powerful option. What about controlling what happens to the business? Well, most people don't understand that within ESOP, control gets separated from ownership. Your business will be owned by a qualified trust. They know nothing about running your business. Control stays with the board of directors, even if you've monetized 100%. And the board of directors is you and anybody you choose. So you still get to run your business according to your values you want it to promote and your vision for it going forward. Very powerful from that perspective. And lastly, what about your path of succession? I mean, if you're a boomer, especially like me, you don't just quit one day and play golf every day and be happy. It doesn't really work that way very often. So what's your process to go from working full-time to working no time at some point in the future, and the process in between? And who gets to design that? Well, with an ESOP, it's all up to you, right? You can cut the rope and leave. You can stay on as the chairman of the board or in a board seat. You can work yourself into a place where you can be there by total choice and not necessity. So the business will be fine without you if you choose to go, or you can stay and do the part you love. I mean, so you have total control over what happens to you too. So the reason I tell you this isn't to sell you on an ESOP. It's just to show you that this is one of 10 or 12 options to monetize the thing, and the impacts these different options have on your ability to achieve those outcomes in the future is huge. So, to go forward and be led down one path without understanding all your options makes no sense, but it happens all day. So this is what gets us.
And just if you don't mind me jumping in, because I think this is a huge value add. So you could literally walk them through, here are the 10 different choices you have in front of you. Here are the pros and cons of selling to each different type. And then you could even help them through some, if not all of the process, depending on which avenue they go through.
Absolutely. I mean, this is what it's all about. And this is why it's really challenging, right? There's a whole bunch to it. And it's why you can't do it as a sideline or an add-on, right? I mean, it truly does take a specialist to dive in, go deep. And there aren't any cookie cutters in this game. You just got to dive in and figure it out, and go from there. So, and I can share one of my stories about how there's more to the game than money. When we sold to Westinghouse, we had developed some pretty revolutionary technology that would have a relatively significant impact on the country, on the transportation industry in the country, and save a lot of lives. And we wanted to see our technology go forward. And we also had a huge chosen family in our business, a bunch of people who had been with us from day one and followed us. And we cared about what happened to those people. So when we sold, we had clauses in our contract that said none of our people would lose their jobs. Nobody would take a pay cut. Nobody would have to move to keep their job. And when the transaction was complete, they shut the business down, killed the technology, and fired all our people. And I'm here to tell you that really sucked. And, that was 28 years ago. And it still feels rotten to this day. And I expect it will for the rest of my life. So when you put so much of yourself into building an asset and you have your tribe around you devoted to your cause, and you don't get the outcomes you want other than money, when it ends, it's not too fun. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. All right. So let's move on. So let's talk about why it's hard to be served well as a business owner around exit in the financial services industry. And it really has a lot to do with the fact that this is a very highly specialized asset that you can't dabble with. I mean, it's an area of planning all on its own. And if you don't have a laser focus on it without distractions and do it for a long time and have a lot of reps under your belt, it's really hard to get good at it. And so, I can't tell you how much respect I have for you, Damon, and the effort you've put into a relationship with me and WealthPoint over the last year to recognize this and figure it out and to put ourselves together to just bring more value to business owners around this one really critical aspect of being a business owner. So kudos to you guys. But you can't, there's no college course for this stuff. There's no book you can read. You can get all the letters after your name through BEI and EPI and NavX and Pinnacle Group that says you're an exit planner. And it teaches you more about what it is, but it doesn't give you the skills to deliver it. It's experiential learning only, and it takes a lot of reps to get good at it. And when a rep takes a year or two, there just aren't many people out there that do this and have done it long enough to really get it right. So I feel fortunate every day to get up and do what I do with the people I get to do it with. It's very satisfying. And being a serial entrepreneur myself, it's just kind of the culmination of my life as an entrepreneur. So anyway, but and the other thing is, the consequences of having somebody practice on you, not that good. I mean, if you're going to get your knee replaced, do you want the brand new doc doing it for the first time? Probably not, So it's kind of the same this way. When you
Well,
got that.
something always goes wrong. And if it's their first time figuring out how to get it back on track, it's painful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And one other thing is, execution is everything. Not only because if you don't execute and get it done, you haven't really provided any value, but also because if you don't execute the plans you craft, you really don't have any idea how good they are. I mean, they might not be implementable. You might not be able to get alignment around all the key players in the business who are critical to the success of that solution unless you've tried to do that and learned what's possible and what isn't. There's a huge step in between step 4 and 5 after the solution architecture is done and the execution starts, where we sit down with every key player and we talk to them about that solution. And if we have to do financial modeling for them so they know what it means to them to be able to get on board with it and commit to it, we do. And we don't move forward until everybody says, yes, I'm in. That's good for me. And then we have a very high probability of success. So anyway, so what does it take to get it right? It's pretty simple. It's a specialist, right? I mean, if I got a question for you, if you drive a Ferrari, do you take it to the Joe's Corner garage when it needs work? Probably not. You take it to the specialist. And, for all the business owners on this webinar, I'm here to tell you, you built a Ferrari. And if you're going to get exit right, you really need to work with somebody who does that at a high level. So work with a specialist. It's the bulk of your net worth. You have one chance to get it right and achieve those outcomes that are so important. And the other part is collaboration is absolutely key. It's so complex and diverse. To say it's multidisciplinary is a huge understatement. You've got to integrate passing this asset on, monetizing this asset with all the rest of your holistic financial planning to really understand those impacts and things to get it right. So collaboration is absolutely key and very difficult often in the industry. And honestly, it just doesn't happen that often. So it's about making great decisions. It's not some shiny object or loophole or gimmick. It's about diving into a complex situation, learning everything you have to learn to make great decisions and getting comfortable, and then making those decisions and following through and getting it right. So
how often do you think business owners get it right when they sell?
oh man, the statistics are so awful. I mean, so almost all of the transitions are third-party sales right now because of the way the industry has evolved. And, I mean, when a business owner says, gee, I'm thinking about selling my business, every well-meaning advisor on the planet knows good M&A people, investment bankers, and they say, oh, great, I know these great guys. They're so good at what they do. Let me introduce you to them. And then all paths lead to that solution. So the vast majority of transitions are third-party sales. And the statistics are just awful. So here they are. 70 to 83% of third-party sales never close, depending on market segment. And when that sale doesn't close, it's an enormous step backwards. It's a huge setback for the business and the owner. Because think about it, you've put a whole bunch of time and energy and money into going through a sale process. Your people maybe know the business is on the block, and maybe your culture's taken a hit. Maybe you haven't focused that much on your business plan because you didn't think you had to, or you were focused elsewhere. You might have even divulged a whole bunch of confidential information to a potential competitor, and now it doesn't go through. I mean, it's a huge step back, right? And the statistics are so bad, I believe, because it's not done comprehensively. You don't understand the impacts of that solution until you get far down the road, and then you wake up and go, wow, I didn't know my business was only worth half of what I thought it was because it's not fully prepared. Boy, I didn't know what was going to happen to my people, and that's not really acceptable anymore, et cetera. And so that's a big part why some don't close, but it gets worse than that, actually, because of the ones that do close, they close at relatively low average multiples of EBITDA compared to a fully prepared asset. And the reason is because if you're an investment banker or M&A person, no matter how good you are and well-meaning, the more transactions you close in a year, the more money you make, the better your firm does, the better you feed your family. And so I don't think you'll ever see a scenario where you go to a third-party sale provider, M&A, or an investment banker, and they analyze your business and go, gee, you should go away and come back in 3 years and we'll get you 3 times as much for your business. It just doesn't happen. They say, oh, you want to sell your business? Great, that's what we do. Let's go. And they'll tell you they'll shine it up, but they don't finish the sentence. They'll shine it up as much as possible within the term of a sale. But they won't send you down the road if you have 2 years of work to do on it to get max for it, right? So, the stats are this around the ones that do close, which are very few. But a year later, 75% of the people who sold their business wish they had not sold it. That really sucks, right? So between the few that close and then the regret afterwards of so many that do close, it's a very tiny percentage of those sellers who are really happy. And those stats don't lie, right? So that's our mission, right? Is to improve the outcomes around exit, because it's such a big part of getting that asset to perform in the greater scope of your life, the way you expect it to, the way you deserve it to, the way you've earned. And it's the double edge of the free enterprise sword. I mean, me, Damon, I'm a lover of the free enterprise system in this country. I think there's no better system on earth to realize human potential than the free enterprise system, but that doesn't mean it's risk-free or easy. So anyway, okay, we're just about done here. Let's move on. And so putting a really sharp point on the spear, what should you do right now? And this addresses some of the things you talked about before, Damon. So how do you get it right? Well, in the beginning, like right now, it all starts with education. You need to understand the game you're in, because it is the game, whether you're in it and you realize it or not. That's the game you're in, to get it right. And it's not easy, and it takes a long time to get to prepare the asset, to prepare yourself to achieve those outcomes. The business has to be ready, but so do you. And we didn't talk about that much, but owners have to be ready too. And that typically takes a lot longer. Until you understand what it takes, you're kind of flying blind. So we talked about no cookie cutters and no shortcuts, and that's true. But if there was one critical thing, one trick, if there was one, it would be runway. It would be time. How much time do you have? With enough time, you can achieve all your outcomes. You can monetize for full value or more. But if you show up late in the game, all bets are off. And God forbid some triggering event causes you to act quickly. You're just going to have to take what you get. And here's another tragic statistic for you. And it's mostly from my generation, from boomers, right? I mean, a lot of boomers, they're going to die in the chair, right? They love what they're doing, and that's cool. But they should still prepare the asset, because 60% of transitions do not happen by choice. And that's a really bad stat, because then you're just going to have an unprepared asset and take what you get. And after all the work and the risk and the investment, all of what yourself that you've traded to build that business, you deserve more. So bottom line, start now and get savvy. And the rest, you as a business owner, you'll get it right, because when you realize something about your business that needs to be worked on, entrepreneurs are famous for getting it done. So, but you got to know first what you're up against. So anyway, I encourage everybody to take this high-level cursory conversation we've had and get a deeper dive, and it'll serve you well. So, so if I really want to paraphrase it, know your story, right? So anyway, that's all I got. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to be here to address all of you on this webinar, whether you're a business owner or a TFO professional. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, John. Got a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Love it.
So in your experience, has there been one or two key things that really moved the needle for business owners as they were preparing for it? Like, what were the top two things that really made the biggest difference?
A little hard to answer because I'm not exactly sure what move the needle means. Financially, monetization, is that the needle we're talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
financial.
Okay. Yeah, so I can boil that down to a distilled subset, right? So think of your business as a box. It has a crank on the side and a slot on the front. And you turn this crank and money comes out. So if you're a buyer for that box, that asset, your first question is probably going to be, well, geez, how much money does it spit out? And that is your financials. You have to have solid financials back 3 years at least. Five's better, but three is good. So GAAP structured, consistent, and so forth. So that teaches somebody what they're buying if they had owned it in the past, right? From a financial perspective. The second thing is, well, what about turning that crank? Can anybody do that? Can I do that? Or do you have some secret code, and you're the only guy who can crank that thing, right? So that's about documenting your operations, processes, policies, procedures, best practices. Think of it as a franchise, Damon, right? So a franchise is a very dialed in business, so much so that they give you the book and they say, do what the book says, and they give you the spreadsheet and say, plug your numbers in here, and it'll drop 10% to the bottom line guaranteed. And if you want to make more money than that, just buy another one. But it's so dialed in, they can sell the package. That's what you should strive for. So have your financials very dialed, have your operations best practices very well documented. Thirdly is, what about key players? Do they have glue in the seat? Do they have to stick around? Do they have an incentive they'll lose if they take off right after the sale of the business? If so, that's a huge devaluer of your business. So, I mean, just think of it. If you have one salesperson who sells 30% of your revenues and they can leave anytime they want, that's a very huge risk, right? So I would take yourself through due diligence, understand those 50 plus risks, regulatory risk, market risk, all these different risks, and think through them as a buyer would, and systematically build into your business plan, eliminating those risks from your business. So retaining key people. And then the last one is, you cannot be a key person in your business anymore if you want to leave, right? So all of your tribal knowledge, your visionary and strategic guidance of the business, and all the other things you contribute that are important to its future success need to be with the business somehow. So how do you move the needle? You make it so that it's obvious what somebody's buying, and you make it obvious that it's going to keep doing what it's been doing after they own it, or even grow from there. So, I mean, it's kind of a long-winded answer that's not like one or two things, but there's a little more to it than just one or two things. So hopefully that.
And you talked about that there are 10 plus types of transactions. Are there certain types where you see more success than others? And maybe success by terms of no regret later. Like you said, 75% of third parties, they regret it later.
Absolutely. So when we talk about succession, we must be generation specific, because boomers are very different kinds of business owners than millennials, pretty much polar opposites. And Xers are in the middle. And honestly, as you go from a boomer to a low millennial and get into the Xers, high Xers, more like boomers, middle Xers, it's kind of 1,000 shades of gray between black and white. But for boomers, which is most of the transitions going on right now, the things that are most important to them are what's going to happen to my people and what's going to happen to the asset and so forth, along with monetization. And so the things that are most successful for boomers are the ones that where they remain in control of those outcomes. So ESOPs right now are extremely popular for great reasons. It's a very powerful option. We're doing tons of them right now. 301 redemptions are also very good options, not only from a tax efficiency and maximizing monetization, but you remain in control until you're fully paid. So you have total control over those things. And a lot of the other options as well. So the hybrid solutions between those. Really, the big nemesis is the third-party sale, because if you really look at a third-party sale and for a boomer, it's usually the worst option. And that's why those stats are so bad, because most of the transitions have been boomers so far. And when you sell majority to a third party, you don't generally have that much control over the structure of the sale, asset sale, stock sale, and therefore the taxation and so forth. So between fees and taxes, often the monetization takes a big hit. You also lose all control over what happens to your people and what happens to the business after you don't own a majority of it anymore. So, that's kind of the worst option out there, honestly. But some of the other options, like an owner investor model, if you don't mind the cash flows and the income, but you just need to get out of operations and shuffle to the mailbox in your bedroom slippers and pick up checks every month, you remain in control because you haven't actually sold shares in the business. If it's a recapitalization to just take chips off the table and get rid of a lot of the risk involved in this very risky, very illiquid asset, you haven't lost control. So there are lots of ways, depending on what those outcomes and motives are, to craft solutions where you maintain control over those things that are important to you. And it's really just a matter of diving in, figuring out how important are these things. In other words, if, one of the questions I'll often ask is, gee, if you could monetize your business and get 30 million for it and lose all control over what happens to your business and your people and your path going forward to exit the business, or you could get 27 million for it and you have total control over those things, what would you do? So we start drilling down on how important are these other outcomes. Let's put them in the proper perspective. And then as we vet solutions, we can make better choices, right? So I mean, it truly is. I think that's the engineer in me, to be honest, Damon. I've always loved complex things where there are no cookie cutters. You just have to dive in and figure stuff out, right? And this is one of those games where it's complicated. There are no two alike. I mean, owners and what they care about, the people that are involved in the business. Sometimes it's family members. Sometimes it's not. The outcomes they want, the condition of the asset, what they want to do afterwards. I mean, these things there are no two alike. So you just really have to dive in and make sense of it all, start analyzing all your options, be able to model those options so you understand the consequences and get to a place where your gut says, this is what I should do. Right? Entrepreneurs are great risk managers. They do it every day as they build their businesses. And this is another thing. They just typically don't have the information they need, so they don't get comfortable and they kick the can down the road. And we've talked about it. There are some perfect storms out there. And one of them is that business owners are super busy and, so they don't have the time. This exit thing is at the end of my ownership journey, right? It's years away. Why would I spend time on that now when I have all these other things? And then they don't know what they don't know about what it takes to get it right. And that's a bad perfect storm where they kick the can down the road, wake up late, have limited options, compromised outcomes, right? So, and there are a lot of other perfect storms out there too. Like the one we talked about is the language the industry has evolved to use. everybody says sell your business, sell your business. And in the mind of the owner, it goes to third-party sale. That's where their mind goes. And that's what they're familiar with. That's what they've heard so many times from other people. And so, if everybody out there said, how are you going to monetize the business? It would serve owners better, because they would say, well, you mean sell it, right? And you could say, well, no, there are like 10 ways to monetize it, and they're all different. And, you should know about them all. And they would go, 10 ways? Holy mackerel. Maybe I should figure that out. So, I mean, the whole industry is kind of involved in a way that it has a business model to service a third-party sale. And that's one of my pet peeves, that it doesn't serve owners well. And we're here trying to disrupt that whole thing. So.
And I know we've spent a lot of time today talking about a lot of the qualitative aspects, and I feel like we didn't do justice for some of the quantitative modeling you do. And I know that could be a whole separate call. But about how long does that analysis take? Because you really can model out all sorts of scenarios for owners with their businesses.
We can, and we do constantly. Again, it kind of depends, but usually that place between phase 3 and 4, that's probably a couple months, could be a few months, to just go through all those, because we do the modeling, and then the way we function is, owners have a business to run. So we do all the heavy lifting behind the scenes, and we get owners into meetings for 30, 45, or 60 minutes to either educate, discuss, or decide. And then we move forward. So we'll do some modeling. Oftentimes we get together to present it and discuss it. And some questions, some issues come up. We want to do another iteration of it. Let's look at a different trajectory of the business. What if our, we can reduce our expenses by 1% or 2%? And what if, some other scenarios will come up once the cursory view is there, and then we just iterate until all those questions are answered. So, and it depends on the owners too, because some of them have pretty strong financial backgrounds, and it doesn't take as long. Some of them not so much, and it takes longer to go through some of that stuff and help them get up to speed on it and that sort of thing. So it's just one of those things, and that's why when we work together, it's not just a monthly fee forever until we're done. We know what we're doing. We've done it a lot. So we're able to engage a client for a fee and live with it, no matter what the work is involved. And it's on us if it's more work than we thought it was, right? So entrepreneurs want to know, what am I getting? What's it going to cost me to get it? And what's it worth to me to get it, right? And if we can't deal with them in that way, we don't feel like we're serving them very well, because that's what we wanted when we were building our businesses. We didn't want our attorney to tell us it's $500 an hour and he's done it 100 times, but he doesn't know how long it's going to take. It's hard signing up for that. So, we have a model we built where really we can show the impact of the work we're able to do. And then once they understand the value of that, we can have a model where they know exactly how much it'll cost not to exceed. Sometimes it goes faster and we just end early and we're done, and that's fine, and it costs less. But if it takes longer, that's on us. So
I think we're coming to the end here. I don't see any more questions. So thank you again, John, for spending time with us today. That was a wonderful and informative session. For everyone watching, thank you for your interest and for the thoughtful questions. If we didn't have time to get to your question, or if you think of something after the fact, please reach out to either John, I've got his contact info up on the screen now, or you could reach out to myself. And then again, this will be recorded. We'll get that out over the next probably couple of weeks. So thank you everyone for your time. We look forward to having you at future webinars, and have a wonderful night.